Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Muslim Exchange's first podcast. I'm Faraz Umar, and in our podcast, we'll be sharing some educational content and interviewing Muslim professionals, business people from different backgrounds to learn from them. And in our first podcast, we have Brother Muhammad Maxwell Hassan of Kalam Power. It's very interesting what he does is he provides communication training for Muslims, and especially Muslim introverts. Um, and this is a very niche area of interest um, that I found, Brother Muhammad doing very well. So I thought let's ask him a few questions. Um, so, Brother Muhammad, Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for coming on our first podcast.
Wa alaikum assalam, man. This is first, man. It's an honor, man. Everyone's got to start somewhere. It's awesome, and I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, brother. Jazakallah khair. So, can you tell us about your background, your work, and why are you doing this?
For sure, Kalam Power. How was it born? So I don't know about you, but I really enjoy watching TED Talks. And I remember a few years ago, I binge watched a lot of them. You watch one after another and another. You get super excited, and you get so inspired with all these ideas. And so one day I thought to myself, how cool would it be if I actually attended a live TED Talk? And if we were to go back in time for a bit, remember when the pandemic hit, everything was all virtual, and
Yeah,
everyone was on the screen. You kind of forget that feeling of live interactive events.
that's right.
So I looked to my left, I looked to my right, I was saying, hey, is there an actual TED Talk in my area? And the answer was no. So, as they say, if opportunity doesn't knock, build a door. So if no one else is organizing it, why not I try to take the reins and do it? So alhamdulillah, I jumped through a lot of different hurdles, had to get the license, finally got it, and alhamdulillah, I was very fortunate to not only host one, but two TEDx events. Now, that being said, the glass is half full. Because as much as I love TED Talks, it's great. As a Muslim, what does Islam have to offer about communication, about public speaking, and overall, how can we put our best foot forward? And so I looked to my left and looked to my right again and said, is there anyone doing this kind of stuff? Again, the answer is no. And it seems to be a common thing. You got to have to roll up your sleeves. If no one else is doing it, I got to do it myself. And so, alhamdulillah, combining all the knowledge I have with public speaking and training, but putting it in the context for Muslims, although it's for introverts and extroverts, for everybody, kind of shying away. It looks like a lot of people who may not consider themselves to be introverts, they feel like I got to move up the ladder. So it's across the board. Any Muslim who's looking to improve, that's kind of what I'm trying to do. And so that's how that idea came about.
MashaAllah, that's amazing. I mean, that's exactly what was on my mind when I first came across your services and your posts on social media on LinkedIn. And I was like thinking, why are you doing like okay, this is so interesting communication, but you're doing it specifically for Muslims. And mashallah, that's and I really appreciate that you're you looked at it. Okay, nobody's doing it, so I should just do it, and just went on it. So my next question is like, okay, so how do you believe these skills, these communication skills, impact Muslims in particular, like people who are shy or introverts?
100%. Like it's across the board. This is a human problem, but specifically for Muslims, what I found in my experience is there are a lot of brilliant minds, super intelligent engineers, doctors, dentists. Let's say those are like the higher end craft, but then even at other levels as well, blue collar, white collar, what have you. Like there's so many people, so many amazing, talented Muslims. The biggest problem though is how do you articulate yourself and put yourself out there? How? Because for one easy example. Now you notice the media, and again, not tarnishing. It is what it is. Like the media, it is what it is. And so when you have, let's say, not so pleasant news being portrayed, Who's there to present a different narrative? Who's able to articulate themselves in a respectful manner? Someone who's able to put Islam in a better light. A lot of people are great with their hands. Don't get me wrong, but you know what I mean? Like, you gotta write. So the point being is that, like, if you're able to articulate, words are the currency of today. If you
Right.
know how to put yourself out there, your skills are great, but at the same time, to not
Yeah.
only defend but also put forth a good image, it is what it is. So it's the words that matter.
Yeah. I mean, you actually uh, pointed to a very important question, like challenge that Muslims have been facing, and that is with regards to how the media has been portraying Islam, and you know, obviously with all the world events in the last decade or like last 2 decades, um, Muslims have been constantly under pressure, right? So what do you think? How can Muslims, counter these things, and how does this communication skill like come into place? What can they do? You know, I mean, how does all of this tie in together?
My overall take, though, with Muslims in the media, I don't want to have a one-sided approach. I mean, I like to have a balanced approach. Are there some Muslims out there, unfortunately, who make wrong decisions and who have tarnished the image of Islam? Absolutely. It's sad to see, and we don't just want to paint everyone with one brush. Oh, the media is attacking. There may be some truth to what they're saying. You have to dig in and have that media literacy. Are there some people who say things or do things that just are absolutely, like, just out of line? Of course. And that's where that now, in terms of adding fuel to the fire, that's where things get more problematic. So now, if you look at, let's say, the average Muslim who looks at the news or looks at a certain instance, and you see already like, I'll give you a prime example. You go on a social media website and you see the comments, one after the other, negative, negative, negative. Someone is misquoting a hadith. Someone is misquoting an ayah of the Quran. Someone is just saying, oh, look at these Muslims. You see, this is what, and already the negative, 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 fuel, 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 fuel. And so, if you are sitting there just minding your own business and saying, oh, this doesn't apply to me, and just like that, well, guess what happens? If all you have is negative, 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 nothing to combat that, nothing to put up another image against it, then what are you left with? All that negativity. So for Muslims, if they know how to equip themselves and be respectful and have that civilized discourse, using the same language, using the same thought process, using the similar things, then you'll have a much better chance of respectfully putting the image out there. Now, again, are there some people who just, no matter what, you present all the evidence, you present all the good things, you do good manners, and they still don't want to accept? Then it's on them. But at the very least, you can't just have it totally lopsided where, like, 1,000%, like 1,000 negative comments, only one positive. Then what does that say? Some people sometimes might feel like they feel like this is the responsibility of the imams or the shuyukh to just handle all this stuff. And don't get me wrong, it's true. When there's some fiqh issue, when there's something like that, leave it to the experts. But when there's something blatant or something just disrespectful, just down the line, Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, didn't he tell us to, even if you know one ayah, convey it? Like, go down to that basic level, basic stuff. We're not talking specific things about fiqh that require scholarly efforts. At the
Right.
same time, if you know something like, for example, alcohol is forbidden, you know that. Generally, like, as Muslims, we know clear cut, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. Alcohol is it's not fit for Muslims to consume. And all of a sudden you see a comment and saying all this stuff about alcohol. Okay, wait a minute. Like, you use the basics. A lot of people don't want to stick their neck out because they don't want to get involved, and they don't have the right words to say, because I don't want to face this backlash, and then and then here I am, and this back and forth, back and forth. I think that's where the genesis of all this comes from. This is for the imams and the shuyukh and the da'is, and I'm just sitting here sipping my Starbucks and just enjoying myself. And I don't want to get involved in this, because even if I do leave a comment, I don't want to get caught up in this back and forth. So, I mean, that's just another food for thought here in terms of what's happened. And when you don't invest in communication techniques, just for yourself, forget about even supporting, just for yourself, then you're already at a disadvantage beyond belief.
Jazakallah khair. That's an important point. what are some specific strategies or techniques you teach to Muslims to be confident, be comfortable expressing themselves?
Well, for starters, everyone is different in their own capacity. The way I like to break things down, or what I've learned, I should say, that I've seen communication being broken down is into four parts: the message, delivery, storytelling, and impromptu. Like those are main ways. So is it a question of, do you know what to say? Like the actual content is the problem. Maybe you don't know what to say. So this is actually where you would start off. The other side is, I know what to say, but man, my voice is monotone. I sound flat. I don't have any energy when I'm talking. I don't feel like they don't like to listen to me. They don't like listening to me. So then there's a problem with delivery. And I specifically like separating all this with storytelling because nowadays people like facts, 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 but it's the stories that really move and shake people. If you notice, when you look at world events, I mean, I'll give you one recent example of what's happened with the Titanic. Remember that? The submarine, what was
Yes.
it? Submersible. That's a story, right? And people gravitate towards that, and all eyes were glued on that moment, that tragedy, that unfortunate tragedy, what happened. And it's a story. It's not just the facts. So storytelling is a big one. And then impromptu is more like, how do you answer things on the spot? So people have going back to what we were saying before, handling debates. They don't know what to say. How do you go back and forth? If someone asks me a question, I don't know how to answer it. So these are kind of the ways, or the slices of a pie, to figure out where to start. And we all go through all those slices.
Okay. So um, now, as you were saying, that you have like everybody's different. They have different strengths or weaknesses or skill sets. Also, the Muslim community as such is very diverse. We come from different cultural backgrounds, different experiences. Um, so, how do you deal with that in your training or
Yeah.
teaching? Yeah.
I mean, that's a huge part of this, right? Where everybody from different cultures, they have their own unique strengths and weaknesses. When I say weakness, meaning it hurts them more than it's in their favor. I've found that there are some cultures where they don't like speaking about themselves. And even I think this is the biggest one I find, like for Muslims, they're taught it's wrong to be arrogant and boastful and don't show off. Because A, you don't want to get the ain, the hasadat, you don't want to show off and brag about how good you are because you get that. Or B, you don't want to turn into Pharaoh and then here you are, this egomaniac and this, that, and the other. So from an early age, the culture has taught the Muslim that it's wrong to speak about your goals. And oftentimes, one of the initial exercises I do is the simple, tell me about yourself. And they're shy. A lot of people are all over the place. They're not. There are some people that make, let's say, six figures, mashallah, doing fantastic work. And they're shy to say these things. Or there may be some people that are doing outstanding service, like sales or helping out in the technology industry. There's a way for us to present ourselves without being an egomaniac. You just state it as it is. I'm helping out people. So a lot of this is born innate in the culture. So you kind of have to figure out what's the root of that, and then step by step figure out this is not helping you, it's hurting you more than anything.
That's that's a very interesting point you make, brother. To make a distinction between um, being proud or arrogant, or being confident in telling things as they are. Like, okay, this is what I do, not out of arrogance, but this is what I do out of simply put, this is who I am. This is what I do. This is you know, and that is without those extra the wrong side of things, like being the egoistic kind of person. I think Prophet ﷺ was, he was the best of examples. He sometimes would say that, I am the one who has been given this kind of special title, and I say this without having a pride or fakhr in that, or
Yeah.
subhanallah.
It all boils down to context beyond anything else. And it's
Right,
the way, and also it's the way you say certain things. If you
right,
say something like, I am the manager of a seven-figure industry, and you're like, you're talking down to someone who's, let's say, someone who doesn't even know they're living paycheck to paycheck, then already there's a problem there.
right.
And there's that. Yes, it's true. Don't get me wrong. If you have seven figures, mashallah, tabarakallah, all right, and it's halal income, you can do so much with it. You're in a privileged position, and you worked your way up. I'm sure they clawed their way through that. It's not just handed to them as inheritance or something. Someone who genuinely made that money, they know one day they slept on the floor, the next day they're in a mansion. Like that's a wonderful big leap to accomplish and be proud of course, naturally. Now the question is, how do you convey that, and who are you conveying it to, and what's the purpose of you conveying that? All these factors
Yeah,
tie into this, and then you'll realize it's not lumped all in one category. Oh, it's haram for me to say my good thing.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's very well put. Thank you, brother Muhammad. So, so I guess that is probably uh, one of the biggest misconceptions that Muslims probably have when it comes to communication. Do you have any other misconceptions that you have seen among Muslims?
Sure. I mean, one big thing I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that this is removed from people's hearts is like this imposter syndrome. One thing I found over and over again is where people don't feel like they're worthy in the position that they're in. And where this comes into play, what I find more than anything else, is the lack of skills or investment in that. So, meaning, let's just say hypothetically you are a dentist and you are earning a great amount of money. Great. Like, don't get me wrong, dentistry is a very specialized field. Now, if you are having second thoughts, or I shouldn't be on a podcast, or maybe I shouldn't get on the, go on a, in a conference because to share my thing, I don't want to do all that. I'd rather stick here. This sort of discrepancy, it's all because of lack of investment in the skills that you put into it. It's just like, here's an analogy outside of, let's say, the Muslim context. People look at Michael Jordan. A lot of people think Michael Jordan is the greatest basketball player of all time. And people used to ask him, why aren't you scared of taking that last shot? The game is on the line. Oftentimes, maybe it's even a playoff game. If you miss this, that means you're out. So it's very, very pressure. Either you're a winner or a loser. So a lot of people would shy away from that. I don't want to take that last shot. But this is one thing that Michael Jordan said that, stuck with me. He said, hard work eliminates fear. When you put in the work, then you're not scared anymore. He says, you know how many times I practiced that shot? I practiced that moment, that incident. So you do it so many times, it just becomes a walk in the park. It's second nature. But most people, when they feel that way, it's because they haven't put in the work. Most people are scared of work. I don't know why, but it's just, that's all it is. If I was to ask you, Brother Faraz, to speak on polar bears in front of geologists, for example, and say it with such conviction, you'd probably be like, what on earth? I'm guessing. I don't know anything about polar bears, as well as like to that scientific level, talking to even geologists is not the right word, isn't it? Geologists are for rocks, am I right? So even then,
Yeah,
you see the
yeah,
you see
I
my
get the point. Is that yeah? So I mean, yeah, you're right that the imposter syndrome you mentioned is something that a lot of people are discussing, right? Even people who are into like okay, they're pretty much they've done a lot in their field and they've reached they've reached big positions and they have the experience and skill and they still feel they, according to their own admission, I think is that they feel that kind of imposter syndrome that that they're unable to deal with. I guess as you're saying, you need to practice uh, more of whatever you are like, whether that's a presentation or whether that's speaking in public, whatever you are tasked with, you need to prepare more for that specific, like in this case, communication, I suppose.
Yeah, and I heard it been put like this, that we act based on who we believe we think we are.
Right.
So we act based on our identity. If you truly think you're a king, like, I mean, I'm not just saying this like as an actor or something, like you really believed in your heart of hearts that you're a king, wouldn't the way you walk change? The way you talk change? The way you thought changed? Because you really believed I am a king. Now, that could be delusion is one side, but now apply this concept to some, you use this in a positive side or use it to your advantage. If you say, I am worthy of being on a grand stage, how would you act? How would you behave? I am a manager of a role that oversees, I don't know, 20 employees or 30 employees that is respected. I believe I have a seat at this table. So when it all starts with that. If we act based on who we think we are. And
Hmm.
if we think that, I'm not worthy, I'm not that important, or I'm not that, already, then, that's it. You already thrown in the towel. So the half of the equation is what you believe in, who you believe you think you are, and then the other half is the work ethic to actually do that. The imposter syndrome kicks in is when you believe one thing and you don't put any, you don't back it up. It's like you write the check, but you don't cash it.
Yeah, that's a very very interesting point, Brother Muhammad, because you know, I mean, to tie it back in with our, in the Muslim Islamic context, is that um, a way to look at it is that it is Allah who has given you this position, right? So why should you doubt it, right? You can probably you have to believe it because Alhamdulillah, it is whatever blessing you've been given with, it is something that Allah has given you. So why should you doubt it?
Uh,
And if you believe in Allah, then you be confident that Allah has given you, and Allah is going to help you in this task. You have to do your part, put in the hard work by putting your trust in Allah, because Allah has put you in that situation, right?
Beautiful, because okay, I think here's an illustrative point from the Quran that I think broadening it out is what explains this whole situation. In Surah Al-Kahf, you have the man with two gardens.
That's right.
This guy he's been given a lot. So already, but you notice in the Quran, Allah records his words and he's very arrogant. Okay, I mean he's proud of what he is. I have these gardens, and even if I return back, I'll get more. Okay, so clearly this guy has self-confidence. Okay. Now, what ended up happening, because he didn't ascribe that to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he didn't connect that at all, didn't give any thanks to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, destroyed. Okay? So this is one side. On the other side, you have Sulaiman alayhi salam, king. And you notice in the Quran, I can't recall from memory, but there is a dua that he makes to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala where he basically asks Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give me a kingdom so grand that no one before me and no one after me will ever see.
Yeah.
So you see, I love what you put right here is that when you put Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always in the equation, this is the difference. You have two important figures. Of course, Sulaiman alayhi salam is the more important one because he's a prophet and a king. And the man with two gardens. But these gardens must have been so amazing, that's why Allah mentioned it, to include it in this particular story. But look at the difference maker. Although the scale of their gifts are not the same, look at the attitude and how they approach it. Sulaiman alayhi salam saying, Allah, you're the one, that you give it to me, I will be in service of you, everything belongs to you, all credit is to you. That's it. And then he dominated as a king because, mashallah, he had the power and he used it for good. And he
Wow.
had nothing wrong. Like he wasn't shy about it, or he was saying, do it. Give me the power, I will show you what I can do. All right. And because Allah, so then you come in with such power and force and for good. On the other side, you have these gardens, okay, you feel like you're arrogant and pompous. Guess what? So I think that's a
That's yeah.
interesting.
Those are very good examples, contrasting examples, brother. We are more of a generation that's online. I know you mentioned this a couple of times about messages and comments, but but what do you think are the challenges of online communication, and what would you advise? Um, how can we improve on that front?
For sure.
Yeah. How
So a
would it be
couple of things.
different from and what would be very unique for online communication?
Okay, so let me see how I could organize my thoughts here. One, the challenges of communication. So one, the obvious one, I'm not saying something new here, is that when you are reading a comment, I'm talking written communication. Let's use comments as an example here. When you find a written comment, you lose out on the tonality, the voice, and it's just you read it flat oftentimes. So what happens in this case is that maybe you said something in such a joking way, but because it's flat, like maybe the other person could interpret it as something serious. And then here we go, here comes the misunderstanding and this. So one way to, so I'm going to try to flip it and say, okay, well, how can we solve this? One way I found to be a little helpful is use emojis wherever you can. So when you're, let's say, making a joke, have a little smiley face or something like that to lighten it up so that way it gives the receiving end more of an understanding that, hey, you're joking about. And of course, if this is like a professional email, then this is a different story. Like I wouldn't advise like emojis and things like that. But in terms of text, every day, what have you, you'll notice that emojis are going to be your friend to help you convey that message. So this is one thing with online. The other challenge with online I find is, subhanAllah, you got the way I look at it, it's for myself, is that assume whatever you write is going to be there forever and the whole world will know. That's kind of my approach with things, especially when you put something out. I'm talking specifically to the younger generation for a moment. I know they get tied into this. It needs to be said. Is that sometimes some teenagers, because they're not, I don't want to paint everyone with the same brush. Some teenagers don't think far ahead down the line. They think of the here and now. So when someone insults somebody, I gotta really lash out. So they post a video or they post a message or they post something inappropriate and it stays. It's not the same as a verbal, you and me. Let's just say, Brother Faraz, you and I, we're just hanging out and talking, no cameras or nothing like that. Whatever stays, stays. Like it's done. And most of our conversation is going to be forgotten because humans, we don't remember every little detail. But when it's online, it's there forever. And so the concept of being forever is not ingrained in so many people's minds. So when you post a video or when you're posting a comment, assume the whole world will know and see it. And then you ask yourself on the day of judgment, will Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be okay with this? Am I going to be in good shape? The angels are going to look at this and comment, what's this swear word you got going on here? Why are you writing this? So that's another unique, not having enough foresight to say this literally there forever. How many times, whether you agree with it or not, it's just the nature of it. When you see celebrities, they dig up old tweets.
That's right.
They bring up old stuff. I mean, would I say that that's appropriate in all context? Like you hold someone's standard the same way 20 years ago? I mean, that's debatable. But what I can say is that this is a phenomenon. So get ready for that. You post a comment, 5 years later, you forgot about it, but somebody can easily retrieve it. And just being mindful of that. So
That's
I'll pause right there, but that's something.
that's very important to point out and point out about the nature of online communication that I guess many of us kind of overlook. Um, so I know we're kind of getting close to our time. I'd like to wrap up with a couple of questions. Is like, what do you have any success stories from your experience? People who have tran- have gone through some phenomenal transformation because of improving their communication skills. Or is there a story that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I'll share. Let me see. I'll share two of them. All right, off the top of my head. If something else comes up, alhamdulillah. So there's this one formula I share. It's called the PrEP formula. PREP. When someone asks you a question and you feel like you're rambling on too long, this is a great formula to use to keep yourself on track. Point, reason, example, point. So what's your point? Give a reason, give an example, and give your point. That's the prep formula. So one of my clients, he's in security guard. As soon as I taught him that, like the next day, I believe, or the day after, he started using this in his everyday speech. And subhanAllah, one of his colleagues looked at him and told him, he says, did something happen to you? You changed? Like, I don't know what's going on. The way you're talking is a bit different. And so he said, what's wrong? The security, like my client, he's like, what do you mean? What's different about me? And the guy says, you're getting to the point a lot quicker now.
Wow.
I was like, oh man, look at that. Like, okay, I was like, oh, nobody wants to be, see, the thing is, as well as a side note here, a lot of people, when they ramble a lot of people won't say it to their face that you ramble a lot, right? We know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You may have family or friends. You're trying to be polite about it, but you're enduring it. You're like, oh my gosh, when will this person end?
Yeah.
All right. Or you actively avoid it when you see them in the hallway or what have you, and you know there's a colleague who just loves to talk. Salam, okay, or okay, I gotta go. Trying to avoid it because I'm stuck with this person for the next 10, 15 minutes. So my point is that with that little success story, I was like, oh wow, like this is a great compliment. You're getting to the point a lot quicker just using this formula. So that was great for him. Little mini story on top of that. There was a brother I know, another client of mine. He said he was in a wedding, sitting at a table, just with his table mates. And you know what he told me? He said, I used the prep formula to get through the night. When we were going through with my dinner, with the whole question answers, people, they have small talk. I was like, look how cool this is. He's like, I'm using the prep formula to kind of guide my answers. And I was like, at a wedding. So it's not even have to be professional based. So I thought that was hilarious. And
kind of
but he said
making an impression, I guess.
It got him through the night. And yeah, so there's that. So security guard, the last story I'll say, mashallah, there's this one sister. Oh man, she put in the work. What she was doing was she was an MC for a cybersecurity company. And the cybersecurity company had a big donation coming in for a school. Mashallah, this sister, she put in when I say put in the work, like she was asking me, we talked about hard work eliminates fear. She spent hours and she was talking to me. Should I say this word or that word? Like going down to the words. How does this sentence sound? She practiced, she rehearsed, and she went and she did it and this. And she says, I have a vision for myself. I want to be seen as this type of MC, meaning someone who's calm, collected. And then after all that, she hopped off the stage. She got a flood of comments and people calling her, and even her CEO, the boss, and everyone was, and they hired her to go in Washington to go give another, event to represent them. It's all because of one amazing thing. So all it boils down to is when you invest in communication, when you invest in yourself, subhanAllah, doors start opening up that you wouldn't have even thought of. People will look at you differently, but most importantly, you will look at yourself differently. You're going to look in the mirror and you're going to say, I like what I see, because I know I can handle myself in any situation.
Wow, I think that's a very beautiful note to end this podcast. Thank you so much, Brother Muhammad, for joining me here. It was really wonderful talking to you and learning a lot about communication. And subhanAllah, it is a great start for me, while starting this podcast, to get some advice and much needed guidance on communication. Jazakallah khairan. Allah bless you and your business and your work. And thank you so much.
I appreciate it, brother. Yeah, well, thank you, brother Faraz. I gotta echo my sentiments. Being the first, it's an honor, So it's if you look to your left, look to your right, nobody else is doing it. We gotta do it too, subhanAllah. But again, for anybody who is interested, who is watching this, the website is kalampower.com, KALAM power.com. And right now, there's competitions happening. It's all available on Zoom. So there's one for youth, one for adults. So if you have kids and you want to sign them up, you got that. And there's one-on-one coaching also available at this point. Inshallah, down the line, I'm offering more services, but for the time being, competitions for adults and youth, and one-on-one coaching available if anyone needs it. Free discovery call just to hang out if you would like that little initial thing. But again, Brother Faraz, thank you for the honor, and may Allah continue to accept and bless your endeavors and
Um,
all those who are watching.
thank you, brother. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.